This evening's topic is on cooperation, and I'd like to share a few thoughts with you about this, taken from this book, Living Wisely, Living Well, by Swami Kriyananda. And Swamiji, in this book, has written a short inspirational message for each day of the week. And today's reading for April 2nd is on the topic of generosity. Generosity in victory is self-conquest. It loosens the shackles of pride and fills one with a deep sense of inner gratitude. And I'd also like to share this evening a reading from the Bhagavad Gita. This is from the 6th chapter, stanza number 9. Krishna is saying, "He is a supreme yogi who gazes equally upon patrons, friends, enemies, strangers, peacemakers, those who cause trouble, relatives, the virtuous, and the ungodly." In other words, yogi looks upon everybody with equal eyes. And you could say, according to the theme of what I'm going to be speaking about a little bit today, he looks upon everybody as a divine friend. I'd like with that reading to begin our satsang more formally now with the prayer. Let's pray together. Divine Mother, Heavenly Father, beloved friend God, great masters, Jesus Christ, Babaji Krishna, Lahiri Mahashai, Swami Sri Yukteswar, beloved Guru, Paramahansa Yogananda, saints of all religion, we humbly bow to you all. Divine Mother, guide us on our spiritual path. Help us to see Thee in all. May we serve Thee in all. Guide us into the light, into our true home. Om Shanti, Shanti. Many years ago, when Ananda was in its early days, perhaps we had been in existence 8 or 10 years, Swami started Ananda Village, Ananda Ashram in America in 1968, and the community gathered and bought property to form the community where the community lives now in 1969. And about 10 years into this, we came up with the idea of having an annual work day, a service day, when everybody in the community would come together, and friends from perhaps other places that knew about Ananda would come. And we dedicated the day in early May to Rajarsi Janakananda, roughly at about the time of his birthday each year. And we called this Rajarsi Day. Now, we dedicated this to Rajarsi because in those days, and to some extent even to this day, any spiritual work tends to always be short of financial resources. We were struggling in those days particularly, and so we decided to dedicate this day of service, of serving God and one another, serving God and Guru by our outward actions. And we dedicated it to Rajarsi because Rajarsi was a successful businessman, and he was the perfect blend of a person who was able to be very comfortable in the world. He was a multi-millionaire and very successful, but also a self-realized yogi as well. He was able to bring balance between these two. And so we used him, you might say, as our patron saint for the day. And we started having an annual Rajarsi Day. And this tradition, by the way, continues to this day. And so here, once again, this year, there will be another Rajarsi Day in another month or so. Now, at this first Rajarsi Day, we promoted it, and a team of people were delegated to organize. And they devised projects and brought in materials so that everybody was prepared to have something that they could do and serve quite nicely at. And we had, over 100 people attended at that first Rajarsi Day. And the group that had organized it had made a very beautiful banner that they placed across the roadway, and the banner said, "Many hands make a miracle." And I don't know who it was in the group that devised that saying, but that saying has stuck with Ananda, and you might say one of our themes. Many hands make a miracle. Many hands working together can accomplish great things. And sometime later, years later, Swami Kriyananda actually wrote a song, "Many Hands Make a Miracle." When we laugh and dance and struggle as friends, all our dreams, they achieve their ends. And I wish I was a singer, I could actually sing that to you. But when we laugh, dance, and struggle as friends, all their dreams achieve their ends. And I think this is a beautiful spirit, and it's a spirit that animates Ananda. And I think it's one of the spirits that we can share. All of us in our service with one another, serving with other people, serving as friends together, which of course is the theme of our satsang this evening, which is cooperation. This was a beautiful thing about Swami's life, and it was something that he envisioned for Ananda, one of the principles of people working together. He often said that when a group of people come together, like in those days, 100 people, they come together when they work together in a common goal. One person with a good idea has 99 others supporting him. But when they come together and they work in opposition or in competition with one another, one person trying to achieve over at the expense of another, you have one person with 99 foes. And people that are in opposition, isn't it so much better to have 99 friends than those 99 who are opposed to what we're trying to do? And this was the spirit that he always tried to infuse within Ananda. Swami had that remarkable ability, and I think this is something all of us want to think about and try to emulate. He had this remarkable ability to make friends with just about everybody he met. Many, many people have considered him to be their best friend. And even if it's only a casual meeting, he had that spirit that saw, as the yogi, he saw everybody equally. The first time I met Swami, I was a young man. I was only 22 at that time. And I began to attend satsangs at Swami's apartment in San Francisco. And when I went there, most of the others that were coming, there was a handful, 20 people or so, 24, they would come. I think I probably was the youngest of all of the people that were there at that time. But Swami immediately welcomed me, and I never felt that he talked down to me, that he or was dismissive of me, because I was very inexperienced, naive, and somewhat rebellious. He never treated me any different than he treated anybody else. There was a nice story that Swami told of his vacation that he took once in Sicily, and he had gone there from vacation, and he was at that time living in Italy. And when he went there, he was browsing in a city, one of the cities there, small town, village, where he was staying, and he was walking in the village, browsing the various stores. He was on holiday. And there was a store that was selling hats. And he went into the hat store and began to look at this hat or that hat. I don't think he really needed a hat. He was just idling his time, you might say. And he liked to meet shopkeepers and discuss and so on. And he went into this one store, and the lady was there, and he asked her, he says, "What kind of hat would you recommend? What is popular these days? What are people wearing? What kind of hat should I buy?" And the lady, of course, was very indifferent. She says, "Oh, they're all the same. Whatever you choose doesn't matter." And she was very dismissive and didn't give Swamiji much attention at all. And Swami was there, and he was looking about the shop, and as he was about to leave, he mentioned to the lady something that he was not prone to do, to lecture somebody or to give them unsolicited advice. But he very gently and in a very friendly spirit told her, he says, "Madam," he says, "you work here all day and you have people coming in." He says, "If you were to treat everybody who came in here as your friend and embrace them in that spirit, surely your business would pick up and you'd be much more successful. And besides that, you would also be much more happy. Well, this was somewhat of a surprising thing just to come out and say something like that to a stranger. But Swami was like that because he wasn't speaking to her as a stranger. He was speaking to her as a potential friend, somebody who could be his friend. And he left, and he left, and he went about his business. Well, it so happened that about a year later, he came back to that same village again, perhaps on another holiday. He liked it there. And he was walking down the street, and the shopkeeper saw him coming. And as he was coming, she rushed out, and she says, "Oh, signore, and I'm so glad to see you." And she began to tell Swami, says, "That advice you gave me has changed my life." And with tears in her eyes, she began to explain that how she had taken to heart what he had said. And she had realized that her life in that shop was not as happy as it could have been. And she began to embrace, as best as she could, she began to embrace her customers as friends. And she found herself changed. Well, Swami, this was just a little example of how Swami was. He saw everybody as his friend, whether they reciprocated or not. Now, Swami said, interestingly, he said this, he said, yes, this is how we should be, but it's not seeing people friends in a personal way. He said he was able to see people as friends because he saw the one God that is in all of us, in each of them. And this is how we should be, is try to see God in other people, try to serve God in other people. And if we do that, we naturally will want to reach out to them. We want to be friends with them. Years ago, when I first shifted to India from the United States in 2006, I was stationed in the NCR, and I believe I was in Noida. Could have been in Delhi, but I was in Noida, and I was riding in an automobile with an Indian friend of mine, and you know how some Indian drivers are very aggressive and always wanting to get ahead of that car in front of him. Well, this fellow was very much like that, and he was a very aggressive driver. And I just asked him, I says, why is it in India that all the drivers seem to be so aggressive and always want to get ahead of that guy in front of them? And he laughed, and he says, well, you see, we Indians are very competitive. And I laughed. But then as I thought about that, I thought, I think he's right in some way. There's a certain truth to that. There is a competitive spirit in Indians in the sense that they want to get ahead. They want to get in. Maybe it's the car in front of them they want to get ahead of, but in whatever they're doing, they want to progress, which is a good trait. That is a very positive trait. And you see around the world when people from India, they immigrate to another country, they always rise up. They rise up. The Indian community always rises up. In America, one of the more prosperous of immigrant ethnic communities in America are the Indian American communities, very prosperous, more so than the median. So, but I think we all know that there's this competitive spirit has a positive side, that get up and go, that try to strive, try to be better, try to do the best. That's a positive thing, but we also know that there's another side of the competitive spirit that isn't so good. That competition that I win at the expense of you losing. And this isn't really what we want. We want to be competitive in that positive way. And as I'll explain, true competition is actually about cooperation. Do you know where the word competition comes from? Competition is originally derived from Latin, and it's made up of two parts. Competere is the original Latin derivation, and com means to bring together, like combine or common. Those things together, you might say, is what its meaning is. It means together, and petere means to seek or to strive. So competition in the true sense of the word means to seek or to strive together. Now, isn't that really the nicer way to look at it? Isn't that in a sense of sportsmanship? We're out on the playing field together, striving to bring out the best in one another. We're not in opposition, in competition to one another. We're actually striving together. I have a friend who years ago we would play tennis, and he was a very good tennis player, but he didn't enjoy playing a vigorous game because he felt it was too competitive. He said, I don't like to be competitive, because in that sort of competition there's win and lose, and there's a winner and there's a loser. But of course I didn't enjoy playing like that. When I play tennis, I want to win. But it's not a win from a personal, I'm winning, you're losing. It's we strive, you play sports together, that we both win when we try our hardest, we play the best game we possibly can, we do it together, and at the end we feel so good. And I think this in India, cricket being such a popular sport, I think this is really the true spirit of cricket as well. Don't they say that cricket is a gentleman's game? And I think there's truth to that. If you play sport, or to take it in a larger sense, if we compete in whatever it is that we're doing in life with other people in the spirit of cooperation, is together we're doing this, we're struggling as friends, and then all our dreams achieve their ends. And at the same time, don't forget the laugh and dance part of that song as well. We laugh, we dance, we struggle as friends. This is the spirit of cooperation, that together we can achieve. This is what we want to have, and I think this is what the spirit of Swami Kriyananda was about, is doing our very, very best together. Cooperation is very important in this sense. All of life is the laboratory. And we know that spiritually we have our laboratory of sadhana where we sit to meditate, and that itself is a laboratory, but all of life is a laboratory. And I know many people, they take up the path of yoga, but they forget that saying of Sister Gyanamata. She said, our spirituality is tested in the cold light of day. And one of the ways it's most tested is in our relationships with other people, how we get along with other people, can we work together with other people. You find people that know all of the scriptures, they know all of the aphorisms in yoga, they know all of the asanas and the postures, very perfect outwardly, but they cannot get along with anybody. They seem to lack that ability to put into practice all of what it is that we're supposed to be learning and we're supposed to be practicing. This, I ask each of us, I ask myself, in our daily life, can we live in this world in a harmonious fashion? Can we interact with other people in a way to bring harmony, to bring cooperation, to bring joy into this world? Paramahansa Yogananda said something very interesting that I found helpful. He said, if you cannot win the love of other people, how is it possible to win the love of God? Other people, you might say, are the laboratory with which we're faced, which we must work with. Sometimes it seems a bit of a struggle. And people oftentimes say, people, and they want to escape, they want to go away, they want to get off into the jungle or go up in the mountains so that they don't have to face those struggles that are presented to us when other people interact. And so this is a blessing that we have other people around us to be able to give us feedback and to use as a laboratory for us to learn how to cooperate one with another. Today's reading of being generous in spirit in our victories with other people. This is a mark of a great person, or certainly an elevated person of elevated consciousness who has that spirit in victory to be generous to those, if you think in sporting terms, who have perhaps lost the struggle, but in whatever way, to have that generous spirit. The Germans have a word in their language called Schadenfreude, if I'm saying that correctly, which is taking pleasure, means taking pleasure in the misfortunes of others. It's really, if you think about that, it's a perverse attitude. But there is that sense that sometimes crosses our minds because we see life as another person's misfortune is my fortune, or my fortune is built on another person's misfortune. This is not the spirit of yoga at all. True victory is when we're all elevated, when we all win, and this should be our goal. What does the word yoga mean? It means union. It means bringing together. And when we interact with other people in any spirit that separates me from another, I'm separate from you, that separation ultimately isolates each one of us in our own individual ego. What we want to do in our actions, in our interchanges with other people, in working in this world, is do those things that bring a sense of unity, that minimize that sense of separation between one person and the next in our interactions with others. And so this is the true spirit of what yoga is about. And this ultimately is what Swami Kriyananda, this is what his life was about. And you see in life that those people who embody that spirit of cooperation, that spirit of bringing people together, those people are magnetic. Those people are people that we naturally are attracted to. They have that magnetism because it touches something in each one of us. Now, this doesn't mean that to strive for harmony in life means that you always have to just be mild and gentle and not take a strong position on something. Sometimes it's necessary. But it's never personal in the sense of wishing ill or wishing harm or wishing for the success of something to happen at the expense of another person or or at the expense of their welfare. This is why Swami Kriyananda often said that one of the mottos or one of the guideposts for Ananda is people are more important than things. And by things he just didn't mean inanimate objects. He said people are more important than projects, people are more important than our sense of what success is. Because if we think in terms of either or, either this is going to be successful and you're going to fail, one or the other, then we're looking at it in the wrong way. We should be thinking, what is in the best interest of everybody? And I think if you find yourself in a dynamic of working with other people, if you find yourself in leading other people, don't think in terms of your own personal interests of, I want this to happen, I want this to be the result. Think in the back of your mind, what is in the best interests of everybody? And this is what our goal is. What will benefit everybody? Because true success is measured that way. Now we have to look at it on what's in the best interest of everybody on the deepest level. Oftentimes people can't see that just in the surface activities of day-to-day life. Sometimes our tendency is to just think of the immediate. But if we're always thinking in terms of the long term, what's in everybody's long-term interest, and how can we then bring that about? Now that's the mark of a skilled person in working with other people, the how. How do we bring it about? And this is, of course, the art and the science of daily life. It's the art and science of yoga, is to how do we do it? And this is what yoga is answering, is the how of the spiritual path. Well, I would say first, meditate. Go within and ask within yourself, ask God to help guide you, develop your intuition, develop that power for you to be able to see what is the highest thing that's trying to happen here. Sometimes it's true. A leader has to sacrifice the immediate desires that you might want to see this happen or that happen, but those around you are not ready to be able to understand what you're trying to achieve, and you have to compromise. Not your principle, but you might say you have to compromise the timing of your objective. Swami Kriyananda was often this way. When he would work with other people, he would have many ideas, great ideas. Some of them I often thought, that's not a very good idea at all. And you would run into opposition because naturally people are various temperaments. And so often I would see him, he would present his idea, and if there was a significant number of people that could not understand what it was that he was trying to do, he would wait. He wouldn't force it. He would try to bring about a sense of harmony. To what level could the group of people with whom he was working, to what level could they rise to be able to then move forward and accomplish something? It wasn't, he didn't hold out for the highest ideal of an outward manifestation of a project, because if he did that, nothing would happen, and he would realize people weren't able to receive that yet. And so he would throw an idea out, put it out for other people, and discuss it, and keep working at it and working at it. And sometimes he'd even withdraw it and then come back with it if he felt it was a good idea. Come back again at a later time. Sometimes Swamiji was always very open-minded too. He would put an idea, often it wasn't completely thought out on his part. He had had the inspiration, but yet had not logically filled in the gaps. And he would put it before a group of people, and people would comment upon it. And oftentimes, he would then use their comments to be able to flesh it out and make it into something that was really quite good. But yet, he would listen. He was always listening in the intuitive sense. He would listen, and he would always have this in his mind. What is trying to happen here? What is in the highest interest of all of us? How can we cooperate as a group and move forward? And it was in this spirit that he began Ananda. And I think this ability comes. Yes, Swami was a good manager of people. He was insightful. He had that ability to organize. But it comes from a deeper sense. Like, he had the ability to not look at an individual in terms of and see them, not in terms of their quirks or their mannerisms or their temperament or their personality as they were now. He had that ability that I think all spiritually great people have, is he was able to see people according not to who they were outward in terms of their personality, but he was able to see them as they were underneath, in their divine nature, what their potential was. And then this is another way of saying he was able to see God in all people. See that shining spark, sometimes even in their foolishness. And I sometimes think maybe that's what he saw in me. But even in their foolishness, he was able to see that there was a spark there of divinity trying to come out. And this is how we want to be too. Is not, in whatever we're working, a situation we're working with, not to get our way, but to try to find what's the right thing that's going to work in this situation for everybody's best interest, that's going to take us in a positive direction. Maybe it's not the ultimate goal, but it's in the positive direction in that way. And this comes if we can, each of us, see God, that spark of divinity in one another. And if we see that, we then begin to realize we can see it in not only in one another, but we can see it in situations, we can see it around us. And I think it comes, I remember that line from the Bhagavad Gita, Sir Edwin Arnold's line from the Gita. He says, "Rare's that Mahatma who can say all is Vasudev." But ultimately, that's the consciousness that we want to have as well. So we can look, all is Vasudev, and be that even-minded, that cheerful, and spirit. And in that sense, we find that cooperation comes naturally. People want to cooperate with something that they feel is in their own best interest. And so let's make that a goal in the coming months and this as we go into this coming season. Let's make that as our goals. Let's see what can we do to cooperate with one another, but in the highest sense, cooperate with our own highest potential, and ultimately cooperate with God and the divine spark that is shining through each one of us. Many blessings to all of you. Om Guru Om.